I will talk about my views on death, and I will tell some other considerations on the subject. I see death as something good and bad at the same time in two different ways. I see it as something good because it prevents all the harm that sentient beings would have endured during the rest of their lives. So it prevents all potential and certain suffering, all risks, and that makes it good in my perspective. But I also see it as something bad because it totally and permanently eliminates a unique and unrepeatable sentient being. Death is the end of a particular being with their reality, their struggle, their history, their memories, desires, uh, and a sentient being is a vulnerable and precious victim of existence with an unavoidable interest in continued living. So I think a sentient being has some kind of value also as an individual with possibility to choose, to think, to act, to experience. Uh, I think death can become preferable, but only compared with a certain amount of suffering. Someone thinks that the ineluctability of death would make the duration of life irrelevant. I don't think so. Just as the way in which someone dies and the amount of suffering endured during the process uh, doesn't become irrelevant because of its certainty, because of the certainty of death, the duration of life is also not irrelevant. After I have been pushed to think about it more, I might say that I think the pro-mortalist conclusion holds for the prevention of risks in terms of suffering, but I don't think it holds for the prevention of harm caused. Um, but I will not say why I think so, because it would be too complicated. So I might discuss it somewhere else. But anyways, nonetheless, I see something intrinsically tragic in any death. I have to say that I don't see how and for whom spreading pro-mortalism can be useful, other than enabling others to advance their awareness and knowledge on this subject, which is good, but it's not it's nothing compared with antinatalism, I think. Or also, it might be useful to satisfy one's desire to express and discuss these views, but still, it doesn't have a moral weight, I might say. But I do see a risk in talking about it, in talking about pro-mortalism together with antinatalism, especially if you do that in a misleading way. Just as any subject, I don't think it's fair nor useful to treat it like a taboo. I think anyone should be able to talk about it if they want, but if you do talk about it, I think you should consider all its potential effects, because it can have negative effects depending on the circumstances in which you talk about it and the way you do it. So I think it should be done in a way that antinatalism doesn't get misunderstood, and in a way that people are not encouraged in um, harming anyone. I don't think talking about pro-mortalism can encourage people to consider killing human beings or committing suicide, but I do think it could encourage them to consider killing small animals, especially insects, and this is something that should be prevented. And it can be done, for example, by mentioning the wrongness of imposing death and the moral necessity for consent, regardless of species differences. I also think that advocating for antinatalism along with pro-mortalism could be harmful for the movement, especially if the two positions are presented as connected by saying, for example, that pro-mortalism is a logical consequence of antinatalism, or that antinatalism entails pro-mortalism. But even just systematically mixing the two, regardless of the context, I think it might be somehow dangerous. For many people, it's already so difficult to engage in trying to understand antinatalism because it's not an intuitive philosophical position, and it's even scary for some people. So if someone who doesn't know anything about antinatalism sees pro-mortalism being discussed together with it, they might be refrained from learning more about it, from learning more about antinatalism. So this approach may reduce even more the number of people willing to engage and delve into antinatalism. And if it is done like this by many, it could appear that they really are connected positions. So yeah, and of course anyone who knows these subjects should also know that they are not.